We
And we're
are live.
live.
Yay. Hey, hi guys. Sorry, my smartwatch buzzed. Um, it's Thunder E here, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, all 7 seasons. It'll be condensed. This is not going to be a very long diatribe or anything like that. But I am joined with none other than the one and only Mr. Juan Bagnell.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk some Trek, man. I mean, you're a little late to the party, but we're happy you finally arrived.
Yes, yes. So if you have no idea what this is all about 2 months ago, there was talk. We did our entertainment segment. We're talking about new Star Trek, and then the Star Trek movie. Sorry, and then I proceeded to open my mouth and spit out blasphemy by saying that Deep Space Nine was crap. It's in fewer words than that, but I said that, and of course everybody got on my case. Sam, Warren, including Juan, and everybody else on YouTube said you need to watch this. So I said, okay, fine. I have Netflix. I might as well do that. And I proceeded to watch all 7 seasons of the show. And I have to tell you, it's all right. So I would take my words back, first of all, and I will say it is not crap. It is a very good show. I thoroughly appreciated it. I thought it was going to take longer, but I found myself watching 2 episodes a day.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good rate to chew through a show like that on Netflix, because I mean, it's easy to get like, well, like on one Saturday I watched like 10 episodes and then you get burnt out and then you don't want to come back to it for a while. So like 2 to 3 episodes a day, that's not a bad rate.
I mean, there were some days where, I mean, there was one night where it's like a weekend, it was a Friday, but my boy was like, hey, we should go. I was like, yeah. I started watching 1 episode, 2 before I knew it was 11:30. I was like, you know what, man, forget it. I'll stay at home and I'll choose through like 6 episodes. I went to bed at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, okay,
living the dream.
Goddamn Cardassians. So I guess I'll touch on things I liked about the show first, and like different aspects. I love the characters. I felt like for a Star Trek show, they had a good mix of characters in there. The one character that the one thing I'm going to say is that Sam just didn't like the captain, because anytime I would go to New York, I stay in Sam's place, and right. I would turn on Netflix on his Xbox, and the captain would talk, and he's like, oh my god, all that overacting. Oh, Jesus Christ.
No, I mean, because and like, to respond to Sam, it's one of the things that we love about classic Trek is for his time, Shatner was a stage performer. He was a really well-respected stage performer, and so he has a slightly more bombastic and theatrical quality to that era of television. And I gotta throw it, like Cisco is kind of cut from the same cloth. There's a very presentational
Don't
delivery.
You tell me I shouldn't do this.
It's very broad, but you know what? I kind of dig it. It's very in keeping with Trek, and especially for the more nuanced, the slightly more subtle, but still very erudite and Shakespearean Captain Picard. I thought Cisco was a nice return to sort of the classic vibe of Star Trek.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I think Cisco was fun. I loved his theatrics, so to speak, but I also found him to be very reassuring captain. Which is what you always want to have in a Star Trek show. You want to have your captain to be that rock. Because right now I'm watching Voyager, and that has its own issues.
There's not the same level of confidence, though.
Yeah, it's not the same, but she still is reassuring. Trust me. Yeah. I mean, in comparison. So that's one of the things you always want to have in Star Trek, is that captain is that, solid rock. Moving down the other characters, my best character, to me, the character I loved in that show was Bashir. Bashir was I don't know. I found him to be somebody who could be so much more, but he wanted to just be part of the guys almost to a certain degree, especially when you find out that he's genetically sorry again, spoilers, I forgot to mention.
I don't know, like, this entire conversation is going to be spoiler ridden. We're going to be talking about the end of the series, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So if you're really concerned about whether or not Deep Space Nine might be spoiled for you, I'd recommend turning this off now.
Yeah, thank you. So, especially the fact you find out he's, genetically enhanced, and how, how he handles situations, especially as a doctor, I guess for me, just because I wanted to go to med school at some point in life, and then watching him and seeing that like determination to save these set of people or find a cure for this, or
Right.
it's like I was trained specifically for this, so I must do it. That kind of dedication was really cool to see that there. He
It's
was
interesting
good.
that you said Bashir, because I think I don't believe that Deep Space Nine handles all of the cast with the same kind of attention throughout the course of, what is it, 7 seasons, 8 seasons, 7 seasons. That I would agree. I actually think Bashir gets an arc over those 7 years that not all of the characters on that show did.
Yeah, I mean, the person who got the biggest arc was Cisco. Obviously. And we'll talk about that as it comes towards the end. But you're right. Bashir was the one who got a good arc, like in different points in time. The one part in his arc that he didn't get was the love interest, which I felt was shoehorned at the very end.
Yeah, that was clumsy.
I was really annoyed because I wanted to see him hook up with I would consider her one of the most beautiful women in Star Trek. And I just forgot her name now. Her real name. God have mercy, it's killing me. Can you help me out, because my brain just froze right now?
No, I'm gonna have to pull it up. If you've seen the show, you all know who we're talking about, but I've already forgotten what that character's name is.
Oh my God, she is. She has a symbiote in her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God.
Oh, I mean Dax, but I can't remember because you mean the second Dax. Or the first Dax?
The first Dax.
The first Dax. Okay. And what happens in there in terms of trying to find some sort of love interest? I actually really did like what they did with Dax and Worf later in the series.
Yeah, I did too. I like that too. I just wanted Bashir to end up with Dax, but it didn't happen.
I can't remember that actress's name either, though.
Her name is Terry, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Terry Farley, I believe. Yeah, she was Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax. She was the first Dax, and she was. I liked her character too. She was fun. She was that kind of character who, and she did a good job of bridging the Klingons and everybody else.
Right.
Whenever they had those story arcs where she would go on missions with either a couple of Klingons before that, or when what's his name, she started dating Worf, was because it's like, I know how you people are, but I'm cool with it, but I'm also my own person. It's almost that, and which is one of the things I liked about the show. It's almost a celebration of a lot of things we face now in society, in the sense of cultural awareness, sexual awareness, as well as also just human behavior, taking into, because that's what Star Trek usually is about. Because you watch any Star Trek show, the prime directive, the way the Federation touts itself, is to take the best of humanity out there into space, and I wouldn't say preach the gospel, but close to it.
I was gonna say very opposite. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is interesting talking about Deep Space Nine, is that it's the Trek with the most visible application of spirituality.
Yes.
Whereas most other incarnations of Trek are a little more hands off when it comes to notions of faith, if not outright condemning bad ideas that might come from the misapplication of someone's faith, So Deep Space Nine runs into some interesting territory. Ronald D. Moore, who we also know as the showrunner for Battlestar Galactica, which also ran into some interesting territory towards the end of its series.
No,
when it came to spirituality.
I definitely agree. I think but he still did a good job in all those different situations. Some of the storylines where you had the Cardassian leader, he hooked up with Bajoran, so he had a mixed child, and it's sort of there's like interracial relationships and how do they coexist with different cultures. That's one of the things I liked about the show, because you see things that now you go, hey, this is what we're facing now in society, and this was done only God knows when. This show was in the 90s,
Yeah, the show wrapped its run in 99.
Yeah, exactly. And, they already had, you've seen all these different things and saying, you know what, yeah, even if you go to space, you're still going to face some of those kind of issues, what we're facing now. So that was nice. I love the relationship between Cisco's son and Nog.
Yeah.
To me, that just felt really organic. That's one of the best relationships, I think, on the show.
Well, and that's another one too, where I actually think Nog got a better, sort of the better end to his story than Cisco did.
Yeah, younger Cisco. Yes, he did. I mean, because younger Cisco, they started the arc of him becoming a writer, and they did an episode where he basically time jumped and he became a successful writer, and that was it. That's the most we got from his writing.
Right, but Nog actually, we got to follow this through line of him. Again, when we're talking about cultural pressures, where he walks away from the family business to then try and apply himself to a career in Starfleet, and he actually gets sort of a noble story arc where Jake just kind of disappears in the background as some.
Yeah, I mean, well, because Jake was fighting. I could say Jake was fighting the shadow of his father, the emissary. In there, and because he wasn't going to get into Starfleet, it's almost like they didn't know how to actually take his character anywhere else. He had a few episodes here and there where you see more of Jake, and you're like, okay, because I mean, Jake was responsible for certain things in his father's life as well as in the station, but you just saw those in. It was so scattered around 7 seasons where it really was unfair, right. To him. Unlike his best friend who had the arc, who fought in battles. At the end of the day, was piloting
a pretty noble character.
Yeah, exactly.
A character that actually rose to the circumstances, especially once we get into the sort of epic war set pieces that we had coming into the end of the series.
Oh, with the Dominion.
Oh yeah. And there's this little old Ferengi kid. Like you were saying, this little Ferengi kid at the helm of the Defiant. And you're like, that's actually a really cool way to kind of arc that character.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It did well. I mean, even you lead back to his uncle, who of course is the perfect schemer, Quark. I mean, Quark was a fun character. It looks like they made him softer as the seasons went. But he still kept his shiesty behaviors, which made him fun. So it was good to see that. The one pairing I didn't like was Odo and Commander. What's her name again?
Kira.
Kira, yes.
That one again, it just sort of felt like we need two characters to feel strongly about each other, and I don't necessarily feel that their backgrounds would have led to that quality of relationship. Because I actually think Kira, over the course of the show, Kira is one of the characters I think has done a disservice, where she starts out as like the most faithful and the most spiritual, and you're presented with a lot of evidence and how the wormhole works and how all of these other beings interact with humanity, and she kind of just stays in the same place. She just always kind of is that sounding board for, but these are my feelings and this is my faith. And then you encounter a character like Odo, who is of a species that is very, very old and is sort of revered as godlike by other cultures. And I just don't think that they would have that kind of relationship. I don't think they would have that kind of rapport with each other. I think there would be some more conflict there as to both of their individual backgrounds.
No, I definitely agree. I think if they wanted to do that before they had introduced the fact that Odo's species was a god, that they might have flirted with trying to go out at that early on, and then that was it, and you know that, okay, look, you know what, it's just not going to work type of thing, And I think I agree with you with Kira. There was some disservice to her character because she was meant to be because at first I thought she was meant to be the opposite side of the spectrum of you have the commander who's like, oh, this is wormhole aliens, come on, it is one, and she's like, these are my gods, and they were coexisting and saying, look, just because we believe two different things doesn't mean we can't actually work together. And that was fine for a couple of seasons, and then it just got a little bit more and more, and then
as the show evolves, Kira doesn't. That's the big problem, is like her views on that, on all of that, and all of that evidence don't really change. It's like, here's the situation, Kira, and you're like, no, that's not what I believe.
I agree with you. I think maybe the balance would have been to do what they did with Cisco in the reverse for her. Not maybe to the extent of Cisco, but this is the reverse where she's like, you know what, maybe I'm not too sure about this. I mean, I know these guys have kind of helped us, but are they really our gods, or are they just see us as little beings that they kind of help once in a while, type of thing. And, you know, maybe that would brought more balance, because at the end of the day, you know, as we're getting to Cisco again, is, you know, he became really enthralled in the whole religious aspect of the Bajoran culture, because he was the emissary. And they did something in the very last season that kind of annoyed me, where they made it seem like, because, you know, so the wormhole alien beings, they exist in a plane where time is not non-existent, but it's irrelevant. So they live in the present, past, and future at the same time. And they were the ones who were involved in birthing the Cisco, or that's what they called him, you know, Captain Cisco. So which means that he is irreparably tied to them, and which means that his actions, you know, are completely, or it's almost completely devoid of any process that he himself as an individual take. And that goes against who Cisco was at the very beginning of the show. So to me, you know, at that point, I would, you know, I was going along with Cisco and saying, you know what, Cisco was very concerned about the Bajoran people. So he would go along with the wormhole aliens. It didn't matter, because that was, you know, two goals that coincided together. But when it now became where Cisco was now just going with the wormhole alien and not necessarily just the Bajoran people, I was like, okay, bro, this is not your faith in the first place.
Well, and doesn't it feel
you still
like
haven't taken that point to say, okay, you know what, I've accepted this as mine.
That's just it. Is it in the last season, like within the last 4 episodes, all of a sudden he's changed his mind on everything that he's stood for leading up to those 7 seasons. And I do feel that that is a problem with Ronald D. Moore's storytelling, because he likes to set up emotionally satisfying conclusions that don't necessarily follow the rules that he's established. I think Battlestar Galactica was the same way. You're watching it, you're seeing, you know, Starbuck on planet Earth, and she disappears, and it's really enigmatic, and you have, you know, all of the people down on Earth, and it's really emotionally satisfying. Everyone gets their little goodbye. But the second that episode's done, you think back on it and go like, but wait, none of that made sense. None of that worked with the world that you invented. And I kind of feel DS9 falls into a similar trap with some of those setups, with how Cisco is treated when we get into the last half of the last season.
Oh, no, I definitely agree. I think that was one of those things where I was waiting. So by season 5 or even 6, I'll say 6, I was like, all right, this should come to a time where Cisco now says he believes this. He actually believes, because that's one thing. But then he's tried to, you know, when the commander, the Starfleet general, basically, was telling him, he's like, you know, are you an emissary, or are you a Starfleet
an officer?
captain?
Yeah.
He's like,
I'm sorry, that's not good enough. You're gonna have to pick a side here.
Exactly. You know, or at least just tell him, look, I'm a captain, but I believe this also. I mean, give me something that most human beings will say. Like, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, because the show was trying to emulate society in this space opera, right? And we have in regular day, everyday life. Some people say, look, you know what, I'm an atheist, but I'm still this. I'm a Christian or Muslim, I'm still this. But he just kind of went, I was
and I don't believe there was any motivating action. You know, like, even if you give Cisco a line of dialogue that says, I believe now, which would be interesting to see how that transition happened over the course of 7 seasons for his character, I still don't feel that there was that moment of insight where he finally accepted his role with these beings. Up until, like, again, like, even until like the last 2 episodes, Cisco treats these as just an advanced alien race, not as gods. There's no spirituality there. It's just that they're 4th dimensional beings, which means they're going to interact with us very differently. It would be like if we tried to interact with a 2-dimensional being. We would not be able to relate to each other very well, just because we have a completely different perspective on how the universe works. If you could move backwards and forwards and sideways through time, like we move backwards and forwards and sideways through space, we would be very stunted, small, very difficult creatures to have a conversation with. You know, like, if you could see an infinite number of time possibilities, and then you met a species that only existed linearly, I don't see why they would need us or care about us or want to have anything to do with us. So we needed some action that brought Cisco on board, and then also explained why these aliens cared about us at all.
I think that was the big thing. The big thing is, you take any religion, right? In in present day life,
like,
right?
oh, we got to be careful here. We're going to
No,
start
no, no.
talking
I'm
about
just saying,
religion
like
and
most
politics and
religions
stuff.
will tell you why, the God loves the people or the
Right.
followers, right? There's a certain specific, Christianity was, Jesus came and he sacrificed himself because that's meant to be. There's Islam also, and then Buddhism is all about the interpersonal relationships and self-fulfillment. So there's always that point, juncture of saying this is the reason why. And you're right there, because they didn't give us a reason why they forget Cisco, because if at least if they presented Cisco and saying, look, this is why we protect the Bajoran people, this is why
Right.
we're here, and then Cisco can either buy it or not buy it. That's all it is. And you're right, the person who bought it was the Cardassian.
Well, but I mean, like, if we're going to compare Star Trek religions to real life religions, typically when we're dealing with, especially like the Abrahamic religions, there's a notion of the creator looking after its creation. And I don't even get the sense that the Bajorans really believed that these wormhole beings were directly responsible for their outright creation.
Yeah.
So again, we don't even have the dogma in place. Like, we don't even really have the reasons why the Bajorans exalt these species as some sort of higher power or spiritual guide. And so there's always that lacking. But again, I think Ronald D. Moore was looking at something where Star Trek is typically pointed to as being fairly agnostic or secular show. And even in Next Gen, a lot of the episodes he was responsible for working on in Next Gen had a little of that faithy feel. But you can't really do that in Next Gen. And I think when he got the reins on Deep Space Nine, he started out pretty on the rails. It's just an old beat up space station in space, and there's this wormhole, and there are some, things that people believe about it. But after the show was doing well, I think he kind of snowballed into more and more of this sort of spiritual discussion, or philosophical discussion, at least, that I don't know that he was prepared to execute in the actual show. I think that still flies in the face of Star Trek.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think what he missed out was the fact that when he did the small doses, when it was separate, especially early on, the first maybe 3 seasons, where it was just individual episodes that focused on religion, and you had Cisco and Commander Kira going back and forth, it made more sense there. It was very palatable to say, Kira's like, no, this is what was in the text. And this is what happened, and Cisco and everybody else is like, well, yeah, I guess, but it also was this. There was a flash of light in space, which is some quantum blah blah blah, and whatever you want to call it. And
it's just like on Earth, like we don't have thunder and lightning gods anymore. We kind of know where thunder and lightning come from.
Exactly, and then Kira will go, well, that's fine, but it happened. And the text did say it would happen. So, and and that back and forth is always normal, where most people can relate to and say, okay, yeah, I get it. But you're right. When he started taking that journey and stitching them together, you're like, okay, all right, what are you giving me here? Come on, let's see it.
Or just let me know where that came from. I'm okay with watching a character change their mind. I think that was also one of the big fears, is that in Star Trek, there's this notion of a more secular sort of focus on storytelling, but you can change a character's mind. I don't understand that fear, especially like when we look at other sort of, I think, also faulty, faithy types of stories like Prometheus, where the characters are presented with an outstanding amount of evidence and they don't change their minds. It's not to say that they need to abandon what they believed in, but they end up in the same place where they started. And you're like, you couldn't in real life be exposed to everything they were exposed to and still be in the same place. And so I think with Deep Space Nine, we had this like consistent character. I'm not a mystical figure. I'm not an emissary. I'm not magic. And then all of a sudden, 4 episodes to the end, you're like, oh, I will embrace what you've given me, magic time aliens. And I don't know why. I just don't know where that comes from.
I think you're right. I think it's the fear. The reason why I say that is that watching Voyager now, there was some episodes I'm watching where it has nothing to do with religion, but also do with, evolution per se. And I was hoping they did the reverse of what they did, and because it made it seem like some creatures evolved from Earth and are related to humans, so maybe they evolved from humans. And they didn't handle that too well for my liking, where I was like, I wanted it to be the opposite. I wanted it to be where the guys on Voyager went, wow, I guess we didn't come from here. Or or at least there's some change, but it was a change.
And
to the
also,
other species.
this is one of the great problems of Star Trek. I mean, it really is a beautiful problem because there's so much content that by the time you start getting into Voyager and Enterprise, you've got established canon that is going to mess up some of your stories from next gen. So, I mean, like, for example, you're talking about, like where humanity came from. Well, there's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation called The Chase, where the Romulans, the Cardassians, the Klingons, and the Federation are all trying to unravel this archaeological mystery. And at the very end of that episode, they flat out tell us that all of the species in Star Trek in this quadrant of the galaxy were seeded by an ancient alien species, which looks a lot like Odo's people. Like the character design looks a lot like Odo.
Oh,
so, that's done. And what's really funny about that is for a show that's as secular and sort of as atheistic or as agnostic as Star Trek The Next Generation could be, that's sort of a clear endorsement of intelligent design.
It is.
I mean, direct evolution.
If you're seeding a planet,
there's no abiogenesis there. It's that some alien species just dropped off a bunch of genetic material. It's kind of the plot of the opening plot to Prometheus. It's funny how many times we keep running into the recycling of the 2001 storyline.
Yeah,
but then you have to remember that like the very tail end of this one episode of Star Trek The Next Generation establishes in Star Trek canon that all biped, two-arm, two-leg, head, shoulders, legs, hands, fingers species come from this one seeding of an ancient alien race. Well, that's going to mess up if you want to do a storyline that maybe humanity also co-evolved on the opposite side of the universe. Like you can't do that. That now belies or belittles what you established in Next Gen, and you have so much content to like slog through to remember things like that. So I could see where a scriptwriter on Voyager is like, oh yeah, what if like humanity was also here? And you're like, okay, cool. Like, except for the fact that we've established that couldn't have happened in Star Trek.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that, but that's good to know, and it's interesting.
Actually, while you're talking, I'll pull up a picture of the ancient alien species
because it looks just like Odo's folks. Then I'm surprised that they didn't even take a chance to kind of flirt with that storyline in Deep Space Nine.
Well, and that's totally been like fan theory. It's never been officially part of Star Trek canon, but just the fact that the makeup design was similar enough.
It's very similar. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Deep Space, but other things about Deep Space Nine I did like, and I also, well, I liked and I didn't like at the same time was I liked the fact that they introduced somebody else in terms of main villains other than the Cardassians. But I felt that the Cardassians took this dive down just because the Dominion came in, and the importance really just went away. It just became Dominion with the Odo gods and Bajorans with, oh snap, that looks like,
yeah. So this is the alien
lady. It's the same lady that played.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same actress, but this is the character design for the ancient alien that you see at the end of, I think it's in season 6 of Next Generation. I could be wrong.
It's called The Chase.
But it's called The Chase, and at the very end, there's like a little 1 minute. She's got a pre-recorded message to all of her creations. Like, if you can find and put together this genetic code, that's a special message from. Spoiler alert, because that's the end of the episode. But yeah, I mean, you can see it's like they didn't stray very far for Odo and Odo's species makeup design. So the fan theory is that they're loosely related, that the shapeshifters came from this species of alien.
Okay. Maybe, but it's interesting altogether. But I would have to say, just to kind of wrap things up, is that Deep Space Nine was a very good show. I was very entertained. I liked a lot of the relationships in there. Even O'Brien. O'Brien was a character I didn't like too much in Star Trek Next Generation. So I was like, yeah, whatever. And then when I was watching it, he shows up in the first episode, I think, or first or second, and then I see his relationship build with, Bashir. They just became buddies. And, they had issues. They had their little quirks, but that's what friendships are,
Totally.
And, you saw episodes where he missed his friend and he had a hard time telling his friend that he's not coming back. Those kind of things were nice to see. Same thing relationship with, Nog and Jake. And also even the Odo Quark relationship was interesting.
Oh yeah, that rivalry is sort of one of the hallmark story, personal storylines of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah,
It's just a great cat and mouse game, and that's always going to be the element of fun. You know, like when you can convince the bad guy to actually help the good guys, or when you can see the good guy maybe bends the rules for the bad guy. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that you can just build so much character drama on.
Yeah, the one thing I found interesting was like the last 2 seasons when they had the guy in the holodeck giving everybody advice.
Right?
Yeah, I've heard the singer. I just can't remember his name specifically.
Isn't it Joe Piscopo?
Isn't
that the actor?
That's the actor. Yeah, I just can't remember his name.
Oh, the character's name. Yeah,
character's name. Yeah. But yeah, it was interesting because it felt like in a way because the way the interactions were in the station, that felt kind of right in a sense that they had to have somebody else who wasn't attached to all the different subplots or storylines, but was designed to be from a specific era and just say, hey, look, this is just how things are, you know. Right. So don't try and muck it up, or don't feel too taken apart, especially with the episode where Nog was trying to rehabilitate himself when he lost his leg. Mm-hmm. And he spent like months in the holodeck with this running a casino and stuff. So that was, I mean, those kind of things were cool with Deep Space Nine. I think for me, what I liked about the show in general was the first Star Trek show that allowed stability, and because you had a center point, it was a space station, so you can always build continuous storylines within the space station. It's much harder on a spaceship, especially unless you're doing interpersonal relationships between certain people in there. So it was nice to see that. On the downside, the way it ended, I agree with you. It was,
I'll chalk it up again. I think for people that really invest in the show, this is another example of, it's not as bad as Lost, but it's emotionally satisfying while it doesn't intellectually satisfy all of the questions and all of the setups that lead up to the ending of the show. So you get to the end and you do get a little choked up, and there is that heartfelt goodbye from Cisco, and there are these moments where they wrap up individual character storylines, and you know that life for these characters is never going to be the same,
yeah,
or is never going to be as exciting as it was, the time that we got to watch them all together. Like this was, you do get the sense in Deep Space Nine that this was the high point of each of these characters' lives. Yeah. How they came together and how they were a group. And so in that respect, I mean, you do get that emotionally satisfying ending. I think you do get that sort of that twinge in your heart. Maybe you get a little choked up, but the second you turn it off, you're like, but wait a minute, brain.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, for me, being someone who's religious, it was the most, I don't know. I just couldn't even make sense of the ending. I mean, yeah, I'm religious, but I also like to apply my logic into things to say, okay, things connect, Right. And I'm watching it, I'm going, you're right. I got the emotional, like, he's leaving, but I felt dissatisfied. I was like, what kind of useless dad is this? Jake is still there. His life hasn't even gone through stuff. I was going through this kind of situations too myself, but you will enjoy the show. Anyone who wants to watch Deep Space Nine, definitely see you'll enjoy it. The one thing I do have to mention quickly is, just like everything in Star Trek, and I read it somewhere recently, don't they know how to build fuse boxes? Because I don't understand why.
I'm pretty sure in the future we replace fuse boxes with tiny sparkler fireworks
on your console.
Anytime there's an integrated circuit, I think instead of building in some sort of breaker or fuse, we just build in like a little black cat, so that when that fuse when that surge overloads the circuit, then you make sure that you completely blow the circuit away. I mean, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense that in space with an oxygen controlled environment, that would probably be the best course of action, would be to have tiny little explosive devices in all of our touchscreen consoles.
Because watching it and going, Captain, aft shields are down to 20%. You get another hit, right? And then I'm like, wait, they just hit you at the back. So why is your computer so evil to reroute all that power
up to the front so you can surge? Now, my favorite is it's not even a Deep Space Nine. It's a terrible movie, Star Trek Generations, when the Enterprise D is getting messed up by that Klingon bird of prey, and for no good reason, rubble, like it looks like rocks, start falling from the ceiling. Like it's like, just to make it more dramatic and have things like flying around. There's like debris that would never exist on the bridge of the Enterprise, like flying all over the place. So I mean, Star Trek has always had that kind of hokey, oh no, the camera's shaking, we're totally getting hit, better do a backflip off of this console, oh no.
But the other thing that also always surprises me is the shield integrity drops pretty quickly
when it's convenient, because then there are other times where it's like they're getting pummeled and you're like, oh no, shields are only down to like 73%, Captain. It's only like it's the shields are built on what's going to be more dramatically satisfying. So there's an emotional component to the shield technology.
Oh my god.
Is this going to be scary enough? No? Okay, well, drop the shield even faster. How about?
Yeah, it is. It's quite interesting stuff, but
also I'll give Deep Space, before we like kind of completely wrap this up, I'll give Deep Space Nine one other big thumbs up of glory, because this is something we couldn't quite do with Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it's something that I think we kind of failed at with Voyager, was the notion of continuing episodic storylines, where by the time we get to like the Dominion War, we've got a season-long arc where most of the episodes touch on one major storyline, even though each episode is still a complete story all by itself.
Yeah.
But we started this storytelling, which I think had been popularized with Babylon 5, where Babylon 5, each season is one complete story arc, but that show was never as high profile or is never as popular as Deep Space Nine. And Deep Space Nine really did pave the way for future science fiction stories where we could tell a story in chapters over the course of a season, as opposed to like in Star Trek: The Next Generation, almost every single story is a unique contained episode with the occasional two-parter here or the occasional callback to an older episode. You don't have through line, and Deep Space Nine helped bring that in, I think, in a very public way.
No, definitely. But anyway, guys, that is it. I like this Deep Space Nine. I'm on my Voyager quest right now. I'll probably do one of that too.
Yeah, I don't know that. Okay, so I mean, some Star Trek fans are probably going to fight me on this, but for me, Deep Space Nine was sort of the beginning of the end. So I plowed through all of Deep Space Nine. I watched that in real time. I got about 2 seasons into Voyager, and then didn't come back to it until there was a streaming option for it.
I'm on season 3 of Voyager. I know what I can tell what they did wrong, and it feels like they decided to do an opposite of Deep Space
Nine, but they didn't really give us a good adventure story. They kind of gave us the same Star Trek we've always seen, and at the end of every episode, they get some magical science-defying way to go home. But oh no, we can't use it because reasons. And I guess we'll just have to keep flying through space all by ourselves. And it got really repetitive.
Thank you. There were a couple of those. The one that really irked me was when Q showed up twice, where Q can take you home in an instant. Now there was one where they had some device that could get them so close to home that if they used it twice, they'll be home, or if they used it once, then it'll be like 10 years or something.
Right.
And they had a logical reasoning because the devices just would not work with Voyager. That was fine with me. I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, you're close.
But so much of Voyager just kind of got wrapped up in technobabble. Because I mean, think about what you just described there. We've got the magical Atrax machine. Well, can we use the magical Atrax machine? Alas, the magical Atrax machine is not compatible with our Cyberdyne systems. Oh no, that's an hour of television.
Yeah, no.
They would make that an hour of television. That's all nonsense.
Other one that was a trip was, they were talking about doing hyperspace, right? Which is hyperwarp, which is basically past warp 10, which means you go.
I know exactly what you're talking. The weird evolution episode, right?
Yeah, no, it was before that. Remember, Paris did a test on the hyperwarp, and then he was the evolved.
Yeah. And so him and Janeway turned into weird slug or lizard things or something like that.
Something like that.
Which is dumb because we're mammals. Dumb.
Thank you.
That's bad.
I was like, no. I sat down. I was like, I just thought. I told myself, I was like, wait. I went to school for biology. I did evolution. So
Star Trek should be way better at not insulting my intelligence.
I was like wait. Well, I was like, I sat down. I was like, even if I didn't believe in evolution, the path in evolution is forward the other way. So
Yep. Yep.
I don't. But yeah, that was that. And then they met another species that had hyperdrive.
Yep.
Didn't get it from them. Hyperwarp.
And not to spoil too much, but we also established the Borg as major players in Voyager, and they've got access to things like transwarp. So again, the science is out there. The science is completely feasible, and they've been working on this. There are ways to implement it, but alas, it takes like 7 seasons for Voyager to find some kind of solution to get the ship home. And again, it's so caught up in the worst elements of Star Trek, where we make up a problem that's all fake science techno speak, and then they spend 45 minutes struggling, and then they make up a solution which is all bad science fake techno speak, and then that's the end of the episode. And it's a very inconsistent and unsatisfying way to tell a story when, thanks to Deep Space Nine and Star Trek The Next Generation, we actually care about the ensemble. We care about the crew. We care about their interpersonal relationships. We care about the adventures that they go on and how they solve problems together, not just through making up science-y words and then trying to explain it through bad metaphors. Well, if we collect the buzzard ram scoops, we can slingshot around warp 7. Oh, you mean like when I drive really fast around a corner and I have a grappling hook? Yes, exactly like that, but in space with warp engines and phasers. It doesn't make it doesn't. It's not a good way to tell a story.
No, it is. It is. Anyway, on that note, guys, thank you very much. Thanks for watching, and thanks for joining, Juan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
And watch Deep Space Nine, and I take back my words.
I'm just happy you gave it a shot, because it is a different flavor of science fiction storytelling. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really am.
Well, thank you. And enjoy your entertainment.
Bam.